The air inside the Indiana plant is colder than it should be. You can see your breath between the machines, not because it's winter, but because the furnaces haven't been lit in weeks. Tariffs were supposed to bring them back. Instead, steel output just hit its lowest level since 2020. Workers wait by silent presses watching a government that promised a manufacturing boom deliver record tariff revenue and almost no production. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent calls it laying the foundation. But if this is the foundation, why does it sound like the floor just gave way? Trump insists this is reindustrialization in progress, the pain before the comeback, but U.S. factory production in May grew by only 0.1%, and total industrial production fell 0.2%, according to the Federal Reserve's June release. Analysts at the Wall Street Journal noted that the modest rise in autos was outweighed by contractions in fabricated metals, machinery, and plastics, the same sectors that defined America's old industrial backbone. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told Reuters in February 2025 that the tariffs were a means to an end, designed to pull manufacturing of shipbuilding equipment and medical supplies back onto U.S. soil. But the data that followed challenged that premise. By July, Commerce Department figures showed manufacturing payrolls down by 38,000 jobs since March, mostly in medium-skilled trades. Bloomberg's index of factory new orders stayed below its growth threshold for 6 consecutive months, the longest slump since 2020. In Detroit, a Tier 2 auto supplier filed for bankruptcy protection after aluminum billet prices surged 48% year-to-date. Executives told the Financial Times that profit margins had inverted entirely once the 50% import duty took effect. Trump had boasted that tariffs would force every automaker, including Tesla, to build in the United States. But filings from the Commerce Department showed that foreign-sourced parts still accounted for more than 40% of U.S. vehicle content in mid-2025, little changed from 2 years earlier. At a press briefing in May, Trump declared America would, quote, make tanks, not t-shirts. The line drew applause. The numbers did not. The U.S. apparel sector's domestic output remains below 1/10 of 1990 levels, Reuters confirmed in March 2025. Analysts from Moody's concluded that labor and logistics costs made mass onshoring of clothing economically unviable, contradicting the broader narrative of total industrial revival. In Pittsburgh, the $14.9 billion takeover of U.S. Steel by Japan's Nippon Steel closed in June 2025, an event Trump framed as a victory for U.S. control. Yet the merger went through only after Washington created a golden share clause granting the U.S. government veto power over certain decisions. Bloomberg noted that foreign investors viewed that clause as a warning shot. Reindustrialization through political control, not competitive renewal. Manufacturing indexes echoed the concern. The Institute for Supply Management's PMI hovered at 49.1 in September, the 7th straight month of contraction. Regional surveys showed 11 out of 18 major industries reporting decline, textiles, machinery, electrical equipment among them. Federal Reserve data indicated that output in primary metals fell 1.2% in August, even as the administration raised tariffs again on imported steel wire and plate. Bessent's public briefings show the tension clearly. In his August 19th statement to Congress, he confirmed that tariff revenues had exceeded $30 billion a month and would be directed primarily toward debt reduction rather than industrial grants. His logic, that fiscal consolidation strengthens long-term manufacturing confidence, faced pushback from manufacturers who saw tariffs functioning as taxation without reinvestment. Economists at the University of Chicago estimated that each $1 in new tariff revenue correlated with $1.23 in lost private investment in goods-producing sectors between January and July 2025. In the Midwest, the hoped-for rebound flickered briefly. Federal Reserve data showed manufacturing output up 0.2% in August thanks to auto production. But Reuters clarified that gains in motor vehicles were offset by declines in electrical machinery and paper. A recovery by headlines, not by depth. By September, Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill sought to sunset Inflation Reduction Act credits that had underpinned solar and battery plant construction since 2022. The Financial Times calculated that 74% of new energy manufacturing investments were in Republican-leaning states, now facing project uncertainty. Analysts at Bloomberg NEF said $45 billion in announced facilities could be delayed or canceled outright if the credits lapse in 2028. Meanwhile, the U.S. Court of International Trade in May 2025 blocked parts of Trump's new tariff plan, ruling that the White House exceeded authority under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. The decision was briefly reversed on appeal, creating policy whiplash. The Wall Street Journal reported that industrial lenders began adding tariff volatility clauses to credit agreements, an unprecedented hedge against executive unpredictability. Mid-year brought a paradox. The San Francisco Fed projected that Trump's proposed universal 10% tariff could raise manufacturing employment modestly in most states but shrink total U.S. employment by 0.2% over 4 years and reduce real household income nationwide. If true, the program creates factory jobs by eliminating others. A reshuffle, not a resurgence. Bessent defended the program's structure in an interview that June, saying deficits cannot persist indefinitely without eroding national strength. Yet by September, U.S. goods exports had fallen 5.6% year-on-year, while imports dipped only 2.8%. The gap widened to $94 billion, higher than pre-tariff levels. Data from the Census Bureau confirmed that America's trade deficit in manufactured goods hit a record $1.27 trillion over the prior 12 months. Across the Midwest, local factory indices echoed fatigue. The Richmond Fed's manufacturing index fell 10 points to -17 in September. The Kansas City Fed reported new orders at their lowest since 2016. The Wall Street Journal noted that capacity expansion projects in the region dropped 23% quarter-over-quarter, a sign firms were retreating from large-scale investment. Semiconductors offered another reality check. In Tennessee, a major chip fabrication project paused its groundbreaking ceremony in July, citing uncertainty over domestic content thresholds for tariff exemptions. Reuters confirmed that at least 3 chip foundries delayed commitments for similar reasons. The industry's executives described the rules as moving goalposts, words not of defiance but fatigue. Even defense manufacturing, long shielded from global competition, isn't scaling fast enough to meet rhetoric. The Pentagon's procurement filings show only a 2% increase in domestic defense manufacturing output since January 2025, largely due to supply delays in rare earth magnets and germanium, materials that remain overwhelmingly imported from China. Labor data reinforced the stall. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported in September 2025 that manufacturing payrolls stood at 12.7 million, essentially flat from 2 years earlier. Average weekly hours dropped from 41.2 to 40.4. The Wall Street Journal noted that if reindustrialization were accelerating, overtime would spike. It hasn't. Bessent has argued that time is the missing ingredient. At a September press event, he stated, "We're laying the foundation. The numbers will follow." Yet Bloomberg's long-form analysis of Treasury projections revealed that planned public sector manufacturing grants totaled less than 0.1% of GDP, 1/6 the proportional level of 1950s-era industrial programs. Energy cost adds another constraint, folks. Natural gas futures averaged $3.25 per million BTU in the summer of 2025, which is, well, nearly double the European benchmark. That kinda undercuts the U.S. advantage in energy-intensive sectors like steel and aluminum. The Financial Times highlighted that rising domestic energy prices erased nearly 40% of tariff benefits for heavy industry, particularly in Gulf Coast refining and Midwest metals. By autumn, factories with the loudest hopes now show the sharpest declines. Machinery production fell 1.5% in August. Electrical equipment output slipped 0.9%. The National Association of Manufacturers reported capacity utilization below 60% in 7 key subsectors. The Brookings Institution summarized the picture plainly. America is reshoring announcements, not factories. Meanwhile, Trump's economic team touts headline victories. AstraZeneca broke ground on a $4.5 billion pharmaceutical plant in Virginia, promising 600 permanent jobs. But Reuters reported that the project had been planned in 2023 under pre-existing incentives. The timing flatters the narrative more than it alters reality. In Ohio, a small precision tools workshop restarts one line, funded by a defense subcontract. The owner tells Bloomberg that orders depend on quarterly signals from Washington, not organic demand. He says we're pawns of the policy cycle. At the macro level, the Federal Reserve's Industrial Production Index for September showed a 0.2% gain. Year over year, manufacturing output rose 0.9%. Statistically negligible given inflation and population growth. Economists interviewed by the Wall Street Journal agreed. This represents maintenance, not momentum. By late September, the PMI's sub-index for new export orders dropped to 46.2, its lowest in a year. The Institute for Supply Management cited weak foreign demand and strong dollar headwinds. That dollar strength, Bloomberg explains, stems partly from capital inflows chasing high U.S. interest rates. An irony, as monetary tightening suppresses the very investment the tariffs were meant to attract. In congressional hearings, Bessent argues that once the global trade imbalance normalizes, the industrial base will follow. But historical comparisons undermine him. From 1950 to 1980, manufacturing averaged 25% of GDP. In 2025, it sits near 11%, unchanged since 2018, no measurable trend upward. Then comes a revealing moment. An internal Treasury memo leaked to the Financial Times in October 2025 projects that even under optimistic assumptions, full reindustrialization, defined as a 5 percentage point rise in manufacturing's share of GDP, would take at least a decade. The memo's footnote, no precedent under current tariff elasticity. That number lands like a verdict. In Gary, the same furnace that opened this story still hasn't been relit. Workers drive past each morning to new warehouses instead. Fulfillment centers, not factories. Tariffs stand, speeches continue, and Treasury tables show record revenues. Yet the hum of industry, the heartbeat of reindustrialization, remains faint, almost theoretical. And as midnight shifts dissolve into part-time hours, one question cuts through the noise of politics and policy. If America's factories aren't coming back even now, when every lever has been pulled, what exactly is still left to pull? We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe. Check out another video that is now on your screen.